My preference in the woodworking shop lends itself more to making furniture or other decorative items. Cutting boards just has never been on my high list of priorities of things to make. However, I was cutting some vegetables up to make some soup with my wife a few weekends ago. And using the existing cutting board just didn't satisfy my experience. I am by no means a cook. I'm a disaster in the kitchen. But when I can, I try to help my wife out. And that usually means I'm delegated the task of cutting up vegetables. So I'm going to attempt to make a cutting board that functions a lot better than the one that we're using right now. We're going to start out with, in this case, I'm using hard maple. It's often used as cutting blocks and butcher blocks and so forth, so it's a good wood. This particular board is, I'm guessing probably about 9 inches wide, a couple of feet long, 7/8 of an inch thick. Really doesn't matter. We're just going to create a general shape that we want to function as a cutting board. Now I do want to start out by cleaning up both faces, and the planer, of course, is the best tool to do that. Even though it is just a cutting board, that's no excuse not to take the time to go through and joint one edge, whip the stock to its approximate width or its final width, and then even trim up the ends to square them up. At this point, we've got the blank ready for the cutting board. And I've got mine set up from the tail end of the handle all the way to the other end, about 18 inches. It's almost 9 inches wide. And I've got an area for where the handle is that's about 2 inches wide and about 4 inches long. That's about it. Now what we need to do is make it attractive and comfortable. So I'm going to start out where the handle blends into the cutting board area. I want a radius in here. If I leave this a sharp edge like that, cut in from both corners, that's going to create a stress point. Eventually it'll just split right there. So we'll put in a radius. Using drafting templates are a wonderful tool for this. They give you a lot of freedom. I'm going to go with 1 1/4 radius, or 1 1/4 diameter rather, 5/8 radius for that blend. The nice thing about these drafting templates, you've got your hole sizes, and you can choose from a wide variety while you're doing your layout. Yeah, and that looks pretty good. Now we'll go with about, maybe a little bit bigger. We'll say a 1 3/4 inch diameter, which should be a 7/8 radius. That looks about right. We'll pencil that in. Do the same on all 4 corners. Yeah, that looks good. Nothing specific. Just have fun with it. At this point, if you don't like it, you got an eraser on that pencil, you can erase the problem. Okay, we've got our cutting area, we've got our handle. That seems about right. Now I do got to allow for my hand to hold on to this area comfortably. Now at this point, my hand would be about the closest it's going to get is right about here roughly, where these 2 radius end. So it's going to be a little bit short here if I put a large radius. So I'm going to cheat it. I'm going to make it a little bit longer. No law that says I have to stay with what I originally drew. Now if I go with a 1 inch radius, it's just going to be a rounded end, and that's not real attractive. Let's go with a larger radius. Let's see here. 1 1/2 inch radius might work out real well. Now see how this will start up here as a nice tangent blend, but then I can bring it back to a point there. And we'll catch up the other side. Same way. Now it's kind of got that little bullet shape at the end. So it looks a little bit more attractive than just a full radius there. Now when I go to use a cutting board, I cut up my vegetables or whatever it is, then I pick it up by the handle, put it over the bowl or the frying pan or whatever the device is, and then I scrape off the vegetables. They all seem to scatter this way and not where I want them. So what I want to do is put a radius on the end here. I don't know what size it's going to be, but I just grabbed some round objects from around the shop. And I think a paint can's too small. And a garbage can lid is going to be too big, so we won't use that. This thing, I don't know what it is, but let's see what it looks like. Ooh, I think that's pretty darn good. We'll just pencil that in. For reference, it works out to about 14.5 inches in diameter, so about a 7-inch radius there. So now what we want to do is kind of blend this in a little bit here, because we've got that hard 1.5-inch diameter circle that we drew on, and that kind of terminates rather rough. So we'll blend that in using my circle templates again. Well, that should finish up the layout. I'll probably just go over to the drill press first and drill a couple of large holes in these corners to make that cutting a little bit easier, and then the rest we'll do on the bandsaw. Well, the oscillating spindle sander is going to do a fine job of hiding my terrible work with the bandsaw. My blade was rather dull and I should have changed it. It always makes sense to switch to a larger drum wherever the contours will allow. And now what we want to do is round over the edges. I've got about a 1/4-inch radius round over bit in my router table, and I'm just going to set it up so that the shoulder of it is just below the table surface. Now the last step that I want to do is to create a funnel in this area. Now there's a couple of ways I could do that. I could dig out my carving chisels and carve this area away, but I've got the oscillating spindle sander here, and it really wouldn't take much effort to just work it across the drum like so. And that'll create a funnel area. What I'm hoping it'll do is you scrape the vegetables or whatever you're cutting up, as you scrape them off the board, they'll work towards the center and then fall into the container as opposed to off of both edges. Now after finished sanding, I've taken the time to apply what's called a salad bowl finish. It's a product you can pick up in most woodworking stores, and it's designed specifically for wood products that come in contact with food and so forth. But that's our finished cutting board, and I sure hope it works better than the one I had.